The frontier of human space was quiet, almost too quiet. Out here, far from the great core worlds and far from the busy alien trade routes, life moved at a slow pace. Cargo ships visited once in a while, bringing supplies or taking minerals from the scattered colonies. Most of the time, the stars themselves seemed like the only companions. Captain Elias Ward stood inside the command dome of Outpost Jericho, a small human defense station built above the barren moon of Hecate 7. Through the wide observation window, he could see the gray surface of the moon stretching endlessly. Nothing about the moon looked special. It had no valuable minerals, no hidden riches, and yet it carried the greatest secret humanity had ever built. Beneath its surface, inside deep caverns and reinforced tunnels, was the first planetary railgun, an experimental weapon designed by human engineers who were tired of being laughed at by alien powers. Ward rested his hands behind his back and stared into the void of space. He had once served in the United Earth Navy, fighting pirates and smugglers in distant sectors. After years of service, he thought his career would end quietly, commanding a forgotten outpost. But now, fate had placed him at the center of something that could change everything. The Railgun project was born from frustration. Humans had traveled the stars for less than 3 centuries. Compared to alien empires that had ruled for tens of thousands of years, humanity was still a child. At diplomatic meetings, alien leaders often smiled politely at humans, but their eyes showed no respect. Humans were allowed to trade, explore, and build colonies, but no one took them seriously. "They think of us as background noise," Ward once told his deputy, Lieutenant Mara Vance. "We are tolerated but never respected." That has to change. The railgun was the answer. Unlike energy weapons that fired beams of light or plasma, the railgun used electromagnetic rails to accelerate a solid slug of metal to incredible speeds. Most alien species had abandoned such weapons long ago, believing energy-based technology was superior. But human scientists saw a different advantage. Railguns ignored energy shields. Shields could block plasma, laser, or particle beams, but a solid, dense piece of metal traveling near light speed carried pure kinetic force. No shield could stop it. Of course, no one knew if the weapon would actually work on the scale humanity imagined. That was why Ward and his small crew were here, to test it. The station was quiet that morning. Only a faint hum of systems and the soft tapping of officers on their consoles filled the air. Lieutenant Vance stood beside Ward, her eyes scanning the holographic display of the moon's surface. "All systems green," she reported. "Power buildup stable. Coil alignment within tolerance. The engineers say the weapon is ready for first charge." Ward nodded slowly. "And the asteroid?" "Trajectory confirmed," she said. "Target is a Class C asteroid 100 kilometers out, size about 40 meters across. Empty rock. Safe for test." Ward allowed himself a small breath. The moment was close. What he didn't know, at least not fully, was that humanity was not the only one watching. Across the sector, hidden inside cloaked ships or disguised as traders, alien observers waited. The Zorath Empire, the Zilari Consortium, even the proud Karth Dominion, all had heard rumors of the human experiment. At first they laughed, but curiosity soon replaced mockery. What if the young species had truly created something different? Better to watch than to be surprised later. On one Zorath ship, the alien commander adjusted his multi-lensed eyes as he focused on the moon. "Humans are reckless," he muttered to his crew. "If this weapon fails, we will laugh. If it succeeds, then perhaps the balance of the frontier changes." Back on Outpost Jericho, the countdown began. "Power coils charging," said the voice of Chief Engineer Harlan through the comm. His tone was calm, but Ward could hear the tension beneath. Years of design, months of construction, all came down to this. The railgun itself was buried deep underground. Its barrel stretched for kilometers, a massive tube lined with superconducting rails cooled by liquid helium. The weapon was too big to move, too costly to replicate easily, but if it worked once, it would prove the concept, and that was enough. Ward glanced at Lieutenant Vance. She was younger, full of sharp energy. He saw in her the same hunger he once carried when he first joined the Navy. "Are you ready, Mara?" he asked quietly. She smiled faintly. "Ready, sir." History doesn't wait. The station grew silent. The final seconds ticked away. "Firing sequence initiated," said the engineer. "Stand by." Ward placed both hands on the edge of the console and leaned forward. The asteroid floated silently in space, unaware of what was about to happen. Then, without warning, the moon shuddered as energy surged through the rails. A flash of light burst deep inside the weapon's core, and with a thunderous vibration, the slug was launched. No one actually saw it. The projectile moved too fast, faster than the human eye could track. Sensors only caught the briefest blur of motion. A heartbeat later, the asteroid exploded, not cracked, not broken. Exploded. The slug carried so much kinetic force that the asteroid vaporized into a cloud of glowing fragments. The shockwave rippled outward, scattering debris across thousands of kilometers. Instruments on nearby ships trembled. Even Outpost Jericho felt a distant tremor. For a long moment, silence filled the command dome. Officers stared at their screens, unable to speak. Finally, Lieutenant Vance whispered, "It worked." Ward's lips curved slightly. "No," he said softly. "It didn't just work. It rewrote the rules." On the alien ships nearby, reactions were far less calm. The Zorath commander's multi-lensed eyes widened. "Shields are useless," he muttered in disbelief. That was pure kinetic destruction. No fleet could withstand such a blow. Aboard a Zalari observation craft, a nervous officer hissed, "If humans build more of these, they will become a threat to every empire. Should we report this to the High Council?" "Report?" The captain snapped. "Report, yes, but carefully. If other empires learn too soon, chaos will follow." Back on Jericho, Ward ordered the log saved and secured. He knew alien ears were listening, but he didn't care. Let them hear. Let them tremble. "Send results to Earth Command," he said firmly. "Mark the test as successful. And notify engineering. We begin preparations for a second shot within the week." The officers obeyed, their voices sharper now, filled with excitement. The mood inside the dome shifted from nervous to triumphant. For the first time, humanity had proven it could stand shoulder to shoulder with the great empires of the galaxy. Ward allowed himself a final look at the stars. He could almost feel the alien eyes staring back, shocked and uncertain. For so long, humanity had been dismissed. But not anymore. He whispered to himself, a private vow carried into the void. Let them fear what they saw today. Let them remember. Humanity will not be ignored again. And so, in the silent frontier on a forgotten moon, the future had shifted. The first human railgun had fired, and across the stars, every empire froze in fear. The echoes of the test still hung in the silence of Outpost Jericho. Though the asteroid had been reduced to dust hours ago, every officer and engineer on the station still felt the weight of what they had witnessed. Captain Elias Ward stood at the center of the command dome, watching the data scroll across the main display. Numbers confirmed what his eyes had already seen. The weapon had exceeded all projections. The slug had reached near light speed, and the kinetic force was beyond any weapon humanity had ever fielded. Lieutenant Mara Vance leaned against her console, her dark eyes fixed on the results. She was young, sharp, and filled with a sense of pride she could hardly hide. "We did it," she said quietly. "We really did it, Captain." Ward nodded, his face steady but his mind racing. "Yes, Lieutenant. But remember, the moment we prove this weapon works, we also painted a mark on ourselves." Across the dome, officers exchanged quiet glances. They knew what he meant. The galaxy was not a safe place for a young species carrying a weapon the old empires feared. Alien reactions, far from the human frontier. In the polished halls of alien war councils, the news spread like fire. On a Zorath Empire cruiser, Commander Krylith watched a replay of the asteroid's destruction. His multi-lensed eyes reflected the explosion again and again. His crew waited in silence, afraid to break his concentration. Finally he spoke. "Impossible. A primitive kinetic weapon should not carry such force." An officer replied nervously. "Yet the human weapon did." "Our sensors do not lie," Krylith hissed low in his throat, a sign of unease among his species. "If this test is true, then the humans now possess a tool that ignores our shields. Imagine such a slug striking a cruiser or worse, a battleship." The officer shifted uncomfortably. "Do you believe the High Council will act?" Krylith's eyes narrowed. "They must. The humans cannot be allowed to multiply such weapons freely." Meanwhile, in the Zalari Consortium, merchants whispered in fear. The Zalari thrived on trade and profit, and any disruption to balance frightened them deeply. One trader with silver skin and long fingers argued at a council meeting. "If humans build fleets armed with this railgun, they will no longer need our markets." Worse, they may demand our routes. This weapon could destroy an economy as surely as a warship destroys a hull. The council murmured, nervous but indecisive. Should they move against the humans or seek alliance? For now they chose silence, but their spies moved quickly toward the frontier. The human dilemma, on Earth. The news arrived in secret channels. The United Earth Command gathered in a hidden chamber beneath the capital city. Generals, admirals, and scientists crowded the room. The head of the council, Admiral Marcus Hayes, tapped the table firmly. The test is confirmed. The railgun is not just theory. It works. A ripple of excitement passed through the room. But with excitement came fear. Dr. Elena Rhodes, one of the lead engineers of the project, stood tall as she spoke. This is the beginning. The weapon is powerful, yes, but it is also fragile. Building more will take time. The materials are rare, the engineering complex. And once the aliens realize what we hold, they will come. A general frowned. Then should we hide it? Delay more tests? Keep the weapon secret? Admiral Hayes shook his head. No, the secret is already out. The aliens were watching, they know. Hiding will not protect us. Only strength will. The council fell into silence, the weight of his words heavy. Humanity could no longer remain unnoticed. The galaxy's eyes were now fixed on them. Back on the frontier outpost, Jericho buzzed with activity. Engineers ran diagnostics, preparing for the second test. The first slug had destroyed the asteroid, but data was still incomplete. More trials were needed to prove the railgun's reliability. Ward walked through the engineering levels, boots echoing against the metal floors. Sparks flickered as workers checked coils and rails. The massive weapon stretched below, hidden in the moon's belly like a slumbering giant. Chief Engineer Harlan wiped sweat from his forehead as he noticed Ward. "Captain," he greeted. "We've checked the rails. Minimal damage from the first shot. She can fire again within the week." Ward studied the endless machinery. "And power supply?" Harlan shrugged. "Stable, but she drinks energy like a monster. We drain half the colony's reactors for one shot. It works, but if the aliens attack, we might not get many chances." Ward placed a hand on the railing, eyes narrowing. "One shot is often enough if it lands." Harlan chuckled grimly. "True, Captain, true." The shadows gather unknown to the humans. Alien ships were already drawing closer. Pirates, hearing rumors of the railgun, gathered in hidden bases. They smelled profit in stealing the weapon or its blueprints. One pirate leader, scarred and ruthless, addressed his crew. "The humans think they're clever. They built a new toy. But toys can be taken. We'll strike fast, steal their secrets, and sell them to the highest bidder. The empires will pay fortunes for it." His crew roared with approval, but the empires themselves were not idle. Cloaked observation vessels drifted closer to Hecate 7. They scanned every burst of energy, every transmission. What they saw confirmed their fears. The humans were already preparing for another test. On a Karth Dominion ship, a strategist whispered, "If we wait too long, they will be strong. Strike now while the weapon is few." The commander hesitated. "But if we strike and fail, the humans will unite, and their weapon will turn against us." Thus indecision ruled the alien halls. Fear held them frozen, but their eyes never left the humans. Captain Ward's resolve that night, if night could exist on a station orbiting a barren moon, Captain Ward stood alone in his quarters. The stars outside glimmered cold and distant. He thought of Earth, of the billions who had no idea of the storm approaching. He remembered the smirks of alien diplomats, the way humans were dismissed as children. Those days were over, but with respect came danger. Humanity had stepped onto a new stage, one filled with both opportunity and risk. When Lieutenant Vance entered with the daily report, she found him deep in thought. "Captain," she said softly, "the crew is excited. They believe this weapon will change everything." Ward turned to her, his eyes sharp. "It will, but it will also bring war to our door. We must be ready, Mara. More ready than ever before." She nodded firmly.
"Then we will be."
"Whatever comes, we'll face it together." Ward gave a faint smile. "Yes, together." Closing of Part 2. And so, while the engineers prepared the next test and Earth Command argued over the future, the galaxy shifted in silence. The first railgun shot had been a warning bell. The second would be a declaration. Alien empires whispered in fear. Pirates sharpened their blades in the dark. And humanity, standing taller than ever before, prepared to defend its place among the stars. For Captain Elias Ward, there was no turning back. The frontier was no longer silent. The first test had been fired and the universe was listening. The silence of the frontier shattered like glass. Captain Elias Ward stood at the command console of Outpost Jericho, eyes fixed on the long-range sensors. A cluster of unidentified ships had been detected, moving fast and tight. The readings were unmistakable. These were no traders, no scout vessels, pirates, raiders. Lieutenant Mara Vance stood beside him, tense but ready. They've split into two groups. One is heading directly for the outpost. The other seems to be flanking from the south. Ward's jaw tightened. They've studied our space. They think we're unprepared. They don't know what's waiting for them. Below, the rails of the massive railgun hummed faintly, drawing power from the moon's reactors. The weapon had been tested, calibrated, and fine-tuned. But this was its first real trial against an intelligent hostile fleet. The first clash. The pirate ships surged closer, small but fast, their hulls bristling with scavenged lasers and missiles. They expected to overwhelm the human defenders with speed and numbers. Ward gave the order. Alert all stations. Lock defensive grids. Prepare the railgun. We fire only once, so aim carefully. Vance's fingers danced across the control panel. Targeting systems lined up. Calculations ran, and simulations flickered across the holographic display. Every shot had to count. Every shot had to cripple their leadership. As the first pirate squadron approached, human ships, small patrol vessels armed with conventional weapons, engaged them. Lasers flashed, missiles streaked through the void, and explosions erupted on both sides. Ward watched calmly. "Let them come closer," he said. "We don't waste the railgun on small fry." The moment of truth. At last, the pirate command ship came within range. It was larger than the others, heavily armored, and thought itself untouchable. They were wrong. "Target locked," Vance announced. "Railgun ready." All systems green. Ward's hand hovered over the firing control. For a heartbeat, the station was silent, filled with tension. Outside, the void of space seemed endless, dark, and patient. "Fire," Ward said. The hum of the railgun rose to a roar. Electric arcs flashed along the rails and the massive slug shot forward, streaking through the darkness faster than the eye could see. Sensors recorded the impossible. In seconds, the pirate command ship was no more. A flash, a shockwave, and nothing remained but debris scattered across thousands of kilometers. Lieutenant Vance's voice trembled slightly. It's gone," Ward exhaled slowly. "Yes, and that is only the beginning." Chaos in space, the remaining pirate ships faltered. Their formation broke as fear rippled through their ranks. One by one, they retreated, realizing that the humans possessed a weapon beyond anything they had imagined. From the shadows, alien observers watched, wide-eyed. On cloaked Zorath ships, commanders whispered urgently. "What manner of weapon is this?" hissed one. "A single shot and their fleet is destroyed. Shields cannot stop it. Their technology, it defies logic." The Zilari Trader Council received intercepted messages. Panic spread. Humans are no longer weak. Their frontier is armed with death we cannot fight. Even pirates who had survived fled, spreading news of the railgun's power through the lawless sectors. Fear traveled faster than the ships themselves. Aftermath of battle back on Jericho, the command dome buzzed with activity. Engineers monitored the railgun systems, ensuring it had survived the shot. Systems had heated near critical levels, but all held. Ward surveyed the chaos outside. "One shot," he said, "and we have turned the tide. But this will not be the last challenge. They will return larger and smarter." Vance nodded. "We've shown them our strength, Captain. But they will test us again." Ward's gaze shifted to the stars. "Let them. Humanity will meet every challenge." The battle had changed everything. Outpost Jericho, once a quiet frontier base, had become the symbol of human power. One small colony, armed with a single railgun, had defended itself against an entire pirate fleet. The galaxy freezes. The news spread faster than even Ward could imagine. Across the galaxy, alien councils and empires held emergency meetings. For the first time, humans were taken seriously, not as children, not as merchants, not as explorers, but as a species capable of turning the balance of power. On a Zorath flagship, commanders debated in fear. "We cannot risk ignoring them," one said. "One weapon, and they destroy our ships as though they are toys." From the Karth Dominion, a similar reaction echoed. The generals feared the worst. "If the humans build more, their fleets will surpass ours. Their technology is Unnatural. Even neutral systems paused. Traders and merchants reconsidered routes. Spies reported back. Every empire, every faction was frozen by the possibility. Humans could no longer be underestimated. Preparing for the next challenge back on Jericho, Ward and his team did not celebrate. Victory was temporary. He knew the galaxy would respond. Prepare for reinforcement drills, he ordered. Deploy patrols around the colony. Shield generators at maximum. Every crew member must know their role. The next wave will not be pirates. It will be empires. Harlan, the chief engineer, nodded. The railgun survived, but it cannot fire twice in a day without risking the system. We'll need time to cool and recharge it. Ward understood. One shot could save them. But if the aliens attacked with a fleet larger than pirates, strategy and ingenuity would be as important as firepower. Vance, scanning the sensors, added, "Captain, we're receiving strange transmissions. They're not standard communication codes. Could be alien fleets moving toward us quietly." Ward's eyes narrowed. "Let them come. We are ready." Reflection. That night, as the frontier base settled into an uneasy quiet, Ward walked alone to the observation deck. The stars seemed colder, harsher than before. He remembered the smirks of alien diplomats, the dismissive words humans had endured for centuries. He whispered to himself, "They will no longer laugh. They will no longer ignore us. Humanity is awake." Vance joined him, silent for a moment, watching the dark stretch of space. "Do you think they'll come for us next?" she asked softly. Ward nodded slowly. "They already are. But fear will slow them. Respect will give us time. And when they act, we will be ready." For the first time, humanity had shown the galaxy what it could do with courage, ingenuity, and a single weapon that defied logic. But the frontier was no longer safe. It never would be again. Closing of Part 4, the first real battle was over. Pirates lay scattered in the void, survivors fleeing with tales of human power. Alien observers shivered as the reality sank in. Captain Elias Ward knew that this was only the beginning. Humanity had struck its first blow, and the universe had paused to watch. The frontier had been defended, but larger threats were coming. The railgun had fired, and every empire, every faction, every pirate now knew humanity was not to be underestimated. The stars outside Jericho were silent, but not for long. Across the galaxy, eyes watched, hearts raced, and plans were being made. Humanity had taken its first stand, and the echoes of that stand would be heard everywhere. Rumors moved faster than ships. Across the galaxy, whispers about humanity's railgun spread from council chambers to taverns, from war rooms to smuggler hideouts. No one knew the full truth, but the fragments were enough to stir unease. They fired a solid slug, and it destroyed an asteroid the size of a mountain, said one trader in the crowded markets of the Zalari Consortium. The rock didn't break, it vanished. Nonsense, muttered another, though his eyes betrayed doubt. No weapon of metal and magnet could do such a thing. Shields stop everything. Not this, the trader insisted. I saw the sensor records. It ignored shields because it didn't need to touch them. It was force, raw force. The listeners grew silent. Force was something no empire could truly defend against. Alien councils in panic. In the Zorath Empire, the High Council gathered inside a chamber of black stone and blue light. The councilors, their insect-like bodies lined with armored plates, spoke in urgent tones. "Humans have no right to such weapons," declared one. "They are young, undisciplined. If we allow them to build more, they will disrupt every balance." Another leaned forward, mandibles clacking. "Yet to strike them now would be costly. Their colonies are many, scattered. War would not be clean." The council leader raised a claw. "Then we do not strike yet. We watch, we listen. But if they fire again, the Empire must prepare for decisive action." Far away in the Karth Dominion, fear took another shape. The Karth were proud warriors, their fleets unmatched in size. But their generals knew too well that shields were the core of their power. If shields failed, their battleships would be little more than floating targets. One general slammed his fist on the war table. "We cannot wait. The humans must be tested. If they are weak, we will crush them now. If they are strong, then we must negotiate." Even the word negotiate left a bitter taste in his mouth. Pirates smell opportunity. While the empires debated, pirates acted. On the edges of lawless space, captains gathered in smoky dens and broken stations. Their eyes gleamed with greed as they discussed the news. A weapon that ignores shields, said one scarred leader, leaning close over a star map. The empires would pay us more gold than we can dream of if we deliver them a piece of it. Another spat. Or we use it ourselves. Imagine, no fleet could stop us. We would rule the lanes. Plans were drawn, crews were armed. Their target was clear, the human colony at Hecate 7, where the railgun waited. Outpost Jericho Captain Elias Ward felt the pressure building even before any pirate or alien ship appeared. He could sense it in the comms, in the unusual silence of trade routes, in the coded signals bouncing through the void. The galaxy was stirring. Inside the command dome, Lieutenant Mara Vance studied the latest long-range scans. "Captain, I'm detecting increased traffic near the frontier. Too many ships for regular trade. They're not entering our space yet, but they're watching," Ward finished grimly. Vance turned to him. "What do we do? Request reinforcements?" Ward shook his head. "Earth Command won't risk moving fleets here yet. They fear provoking the empires before we're ready. For now, it's just us." The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Outpost Jericho was strong for a frontier base, but it was no match for a full fleet. Only the railgun gave them hope, and it could fire rarely. Ward walked to the wide observation window, staring at the stars. "They don't respect us yet, Mara. They're testing us, measuring us. The next move won't be a council vote, it will be a raid. The next test, despite the growing tension, the second railgun test could not be delayed. Data from one shot was not enough. Humanity needed proof, not only for themselves but for the world back home." Chief Engineer Harlan oversaw the preparations, his voice gruff but steady. "We've reinforced the coils. Power drain will still be heavy, but the system should hold." Ward gave the order. The second shot was fired at another asteroid, smaller but denser. Once again the slug tore through space, struck its target and left nothing but glowing dust. This time the shockwave carried farther. Observers across half the sector caught the flash. There was no more doubt. The aliens who had hoped the first shot was a trick now saw the truth. Humanity had mastered something new, something terrifying. Fear in the stars' messages raced across the galaxy, from the Zalari Council to the Zorath High Court. Confirmed. Second test successful. Humans dangerous, from pirate dens to mercenary bands. Weapon real, worth any risk. Prepare for raid. From spies hidden in human colonies. Railgun construction slow, still vulnerable. Strike window short. The galaxy listened and the galaxy froze. Captain Ward's strategy in the quiet after the second shot. Ward gathered his senior staff in the strategy chamber. A holographic map of the sector flickered before them, dotted with red and yellow markers. "These are the ships we've tracked," Ward explained. "Some are merchant hulls, some are scouts, too many. They're circling us like predators." Lieutenant Vance crossed her arms. "We can't hold against a full fleet. Even with the railgun, we can only fire once before the system overheats," Harlan added. "And if the power grid collapses, the colony itself will lose life support." Ward's gaze hardened. "Then we make the first shot count. If they come, we don't waste it on small ships. We aim for their leader, their flagship. Break the head and the rest may scatter." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the plan carried risk, but it was the only path forward. Shadows closing in the dark of space, pirate fleets began their journey. Small ships first, raiders with scavenged weapons eager to strike before the empires acted. Behind them, hidden farther, alien scouts recorded everything. Ward's instincts were right. The first move would not be a formal war. It would be a test raid, designed to steal, to probe, to see how humans reacted. As the raiders closed in, the people of Hecate 7 continued their daily routines, unaware of how close danger had come. Children played in domed habitats. Miners worked the tunnels. Farmers tended hydroponic gardens. All of them lived under the shadow of a weapon that had drawn every eye in the galaxy. And Captain Ward, watching the stars, knew the moment of silence would soon end. Closing of Part 3, the rumors had become reality. The second test proved the railgun was no myth. Now empires weighed their choices, pirates sharpened their knives, and spies whispered in the dark. For humanity, the frontier was no longer a quiet outpost. It was the spark of something larger: respect, fear, or war. Captain Ward's final words that night echoed through the dome. "They're coming. Let them come. When they arrive, they'll learn what it means to challenge us. And so as the galaxy whispered in fear, the first hostile fleets turned toward Hecate 7. The test was over. The trial by fire was about to begin. The desert winds of Paragon blew endlessly across the empty plains. For centuries, the planet had been silent, with only a few small settlements scattered around the rocky valleys. Once, long ago, it had been a human colony. But history had buried those days, and the people who now lived there had little memory of what their ancestors once built. Among the dusty mountains, scavengers and traders worked. They searched for metal, machines, and scraps left from old wars. One of them was a man named Rin Hale, a quiet worker who had spent his life digging through ruins. He never expected to uncover anything important. Most days he found only broken tools or shattered drones. But on this day something different appeared. Rin's scanner, an old handheld device, began to hum louder than usual. Strange readings glowed on the screen, signals that came from deep below the surface. He frowned, tapping the side of the scanner. He had seen energy spikes before, but never one this strong. He marked the spot and called his friend Lyra, who often helped him dig. Together they returned with machines to drill. As they cut into the hard rock, sparks flew. The ground itself seemed to resist them, as if some enormous object lay beneath, harder than stone. After hours of work, the drill stopped with a clang. Beneath the dust they uncovered a smooth black surface. It was not natural. It was metal, and it was bigger than anything they had ever seen. Lyra stepped back, her eyes wide. Rin, this isn't just a ship part. This is something massive. Rin ran his hand over the surface. It was cold, yet it felt alive, as though the metal itself carried a hidden power. The markings on it were old, almost erased by time, but he recognized the faint symbols. They were human. Rumors spread quickly. Other scavengers came. Traders brought their own scanners. Soon, word reached the small planetary council. Within days, strange ships arrived in the sky. Ships not from Paragon, not even from human hands. They belonged to alien merchants, spies, and adventurers, all curious about what had been found. The buried object became the center of attention. Yet no one could uncover how deep it went. The surface stretched farther than any of their drills could reach. The more they revealed, the bigger it seemed. At night, Rin sat near the dig site, staring at the uncovered surface. The desert was quiet except for the wind. He wondered what it could be. A fortress? A city buried by time? Some said it was a grave of giants. Others whispered it was a weapon. One old scholar, a woman named Yara, came to study the site. She carried ancient books and dusty maps. She told the people stories of the past, of a time when humans had built ships the size of mountains. Ships that carried fleets within them, ships that could fight entire wars alone. Most of the younger people laughed at her stories. They thought she spoke of myths. But when Yara touched the metal and closed her eyes, she whispered, "It is true. This is no ruin. This is a supercarrier. Buried but not dead," the word spread. Supercarrier. It was a word that reached ears far beyond Paragon. Across the galaxy, different empires heard the whispers. To them, the word was not myth. It was memory. Centuries ago, humanity had fought great wars with those empires. Though humans were fewer, they built machines that terrified the stars. The supercarriers were their mightiest creations, symbols of human will and stubbornness. When humanity fell into silence, the galaxy thought those machines were gone forever. Now, one had been found. Small alien craft began circling Paragon, pretending to be traders, but everyone knew they were spies. In the markets, whispers filled the air. Some spoke in fear. If the humans return, war will return too. Others spoke with awe. If it is real, then humanity may rise again. Rin and Lyra watched the growing crowds at the dig site. Soldiers from different alien worlds now stood there, pretending to protect but really waiting to claim the prize. The surface had been uncovered wider now, stretching across a valley like the back of some enormous beast. Lights flickered faintly in places, as if the buried metal still breathed after all these centuries. Then came the tremors. At first they thought it was the drills shaking the ground, but the vibrations grew stronger, rolling across the desert. Dust storms rose in great spirals. The earth itself groaned as though something deep below was stirring. People screamed and ran from the site. Machines toppled over. The black surface shuddered, splitting lines of dust into the air. And then for the first time in centuries, a deep, rumbling sound filled the valley. It was not the sound of nature. It was the sound of engines. The desert cracked open. Massive panels of metal shifted upward, pushing through the sand. Air rushed into hidden vents. Lights blazed across the buried structure, glowing like the eyes of a waking titan. Rin and Lyra could only stare in silence. The old scholar Yara fell to her knees, tears running down her face. "It is alive," she whispered. "After all this time, it still obeys its last command." High above, alien ships pulled back nervously, afraid to fly too close. The buried object was no longer buried. It was rising. As the ground shook and more of the structure emerged, its true scale became clear. Towers rose from its surface. Hangar doors opened, revealing endless dark halls inside. Weapons larger than any ship in orbit turned slowly, like sleeping giants stretching their limbs. It was not just a ruin. It was a fortress of steel, a city among the stars built for war. The people of Paragon trembled. Some fell in fear, others in awe. And across the galaxy, when the signals of its awakening reached distant worlds, leaders gathered in panic. The words echoed in their councils. The human's ghost ship has risen. The desert world would never be the same again. What had been silent for centuries now roared with life. And somewhere in the heart of the massive supercarrier, hidden deep within its core, an ancient voice, metallic and calm, spoke its first words in ages, searching for human command. No authority found. Default protocol: defend humanity. The galaxy had thought humanity gone, but their greatest weapon had only been sleeping, and now it had awakened.